For most of my life, up until 1992, I was rebellious and lost. I didn't really give a damn about anything. I wanted what I wanted, when I wanted it, and it really didn't matter how I got it. But after Jennifer and I broke up, I began to change. At the same time I was falling apart, I somehow knew that in order for me to survive, I would have to seek spirit. It's hard to find the words to explain what it felt like when that finally hit me, but I'll try. Everything was dark. I was desperately alone, utterly depressed, and suffering excruciating heart pangs all the time. Looking back, I don't remember actually deciding to pray, but one day I just found myself doing it. Not once, but several times. The next day, the same thing, and for every day thereafter. The prayer I remember saying most was, "God, I really need your help." One night after my band's rehearsal, the guys were going over to Chris's house. They'd never asked me to join them before because they knew I wasn't really into that new age stuff they were into. But that night, for some reason, I was invited to come along. I said sure, thinking that all we were going to do was hang out and party. Boy, was I wrong. No sooner after we sat down in Chris's little upstairs room, than my bandmates and one other friend who joined us began to talk about that weird stuff. I just sat there drinking my drink, listening to them go at it. But eventually, my curiosity was piqued, because the things my friend Mike was saying seemed so relevant to what I was going through. After a few minutes, I asked if he could interpret a dream I'd had in which Jesus appeared to me and told me the word Yom 3 times. Mike asked me if there had been more to my experience, and if so, would I share it? I said sure. It was really weird, I said. In what way? He asked. Jesus seemed to be behind me and up towards the ceiling. I could see him perfectly. At the same time, I could feel myself floating up there too, but I didn't want any part of that, so I somehow made myself wake up. Is that it? Mike asked. Yep, that's it, I told him. Guy, that is so cool, he said. Then he got up and walked over to the bookshelf, selected one book, and brought it back to where I was sitting. He opened it up to show me the meaning of the word Yom, the sound of the spiritual heart, the heart chakra that we mentioned earlier in the audiobook. And his gestures touched me to my core. Yes, I knew in my own heart of hearts that something had awakened and there was no turning back. From that evening on, when I was feeling down from obsessing about Jennifer, I called Mike and found much comfort in his words. Not only did he help me see things in a more realistic light, he also seemed to have an uncanny way of getting me to open up so that, for the very first time, I could begin to see myself. One day he asked me, without judging yourself, "Keith, tell me, do you like your life?" I said, "Hell no." His next question was, "What are you willing to do to have peace?" I told him, "At this point, I am willing to try just about anything." "Then prepare yourself for miracles," he said. Even so, that day, that week, that month, that year, as I began to put these new ideas into practice, I could see the little miracles that Mike had told me would take place if I kept to my "I am willing to do anything for peace" intention. But though everything I was learning felt right, every once in a while some part of me put up resistance. You may ask why. Well, I will give you 4 reasons. 1, I knew that everything I thought I knew would have to change. 2, I knew that I'd have to take full responsibility for the mess I've made of my life. 3, I knew that, because of my unresolved emotional issues, my life was sure to get worse before it got any better. And finally, here's the real kicker. I was frightened because I didn't want my new "I am God" attitude to piss God off. But I was determined to change, no matter what it took. I began to meditate daily as Mike had said to do. I can honestly say that the more I practiced meditation, the more my life improved. That alone has helped me to stop feeling like a victim and to live more in harmony with God. Another thing Mike suggested I do was to train my senses to take in everything around me. To my astonishment, I noticed that whenever I consciously engaged one of my 5 senses, my 6th sense would make itself known to me. Before long, intuition became an everyday part of my life. Let's just say that if it weren't for Mike's lessons and the support of my other dear soul brothers, Chris and Jeff, well, I can't imagine what my life would be like now. I thank them daily in my prayers. Nowadays, I think it's safe to say that I'm a changed man. I seem to be able to use what I've learned at any time to move me through whatever I'm facing. Occasionally, I revert to my old ways and make things happen that I really wish I hadn't. Whenever such unconscious creations do show up, I'm lucky in the sense that I can always resort to the knowledge that I've gotten beginning that night at Chris's. One very important thing I've learned is how to take responsibility for whatever I do. And with that has come excitement, because now I finally get that I can have any and everything I want if I keep on cleaning up my life. To stay on task, I daily ask God to open my heart and to keep reminding me that I can create heaven within me anytime I choose. Ever since I've realized that I am God, we are God, everything is God, I've experienced moments most people would call miraculous. And I've noticed that when I take the time to recognize God in others, my ego that has always separated me from them vanishes, and better relationships are the result. Maybe you are in the same place now that I found myself in years ago, confused, angry, and without direction. If so, my first suggestion is to do as the title of this chapter says. Look within. Take an inventory of how you feel about yourself and begin to see how the choices you have made have affected not only yourself, but others as well. When you begin to assume full responsibility for everything that happens to you, you will find yourself becoming imbued with the same kind of power I've found, and you will be able to consciously create your own life as I am able now to do. Here's something else for you to try. When you're around others, practice expanding your awareness outward. All you have to do is put your God-given senses to work, and you will begin to discover, as I did, the good in all things. Begin to feel, begin to touch, begin to see, begin to listen, begin to know, begin to be. Begin. Lastly, let's get back to basics. To help you do that, I will now offer 3 tenets that have been and are still quite helpful to me, and that seem to be the foundation for my spirituality. Number 1, the all-knowing tenet. If turning inward unites me with God, higher self, then it makes sense to me that omniscience, peace, is my natural state. Number 2, the all-powerful tenet. If turning inward unites me with God, then it makes sense to me that omnipotence, love, is my natural state. Number 3, the all-pervading tenet. If turning inward unites me with God, then it makes sense to me that omnipresence, liberation, is my natural state. The gift God has given to me, I want to give to you. I take great pleasure in sharing with you my prophetic vision of heaven on earth. You are the vision. You are the Christ. In truth, all there is you. Walk into your divinity. Walk into the one. You are God. And finally, closing this audiobook, I would like to share with you one of the last transmissions that came through. This is called Realizing God. All who seek divinity must live a life free from wanting, for that is the source and cause of spiritual bondage. As long as one is constantly wanting, one will only fall further away from the selflessness of grace and into the selfishness of ego. The ego mind is the cloth that veils consciousness. Your wants are its threads. But when you give up your constant state of wanting, the ego threads will fall away and the cloth will disappear, revealing your true nature, the pure, genuine self that is the soul. God realization will happen when you finally free yourself from the brain, the senses, the mind, the wanter. Once you break out of your finite little prison of individuality, you will become conscious, enlightened, one with the cosmic power. Thus will you reach God.
So I'll breathe and expand myself.